8-year-old Liam pressed his face against the thick glass window and watched the dark ocean swirl beneath the colony station. Somewhere down there, past the clouds of sediment and strange floating plants, the floor of this alien world waited in permanent shadow. He had lived on Tiebreak Station for 3 months now, and the water still scared him more than he wanted to admit. His parents worked in the atmospheric processor 3 levels down, maintaining the machines that made the air breathable for humans and the dozen other species who lived here. They left before sunrise and came back smelling like metal and cleaning chemicals. Liam spent most days in the education center with children from other worlds, though they rarely played with him. The Chitauri kids were too rough. They had hard shells and multiple arms, and their games involved climbing and fighting that would break human bones. The Velcrin children could breathe underwater and spent their free time in the flooded lower decks where Liam could never follow. Even the young prismatics, who were closest to his size, found him boring because he could not share thoughts through light patterns like they did. Liam sat alone and watched the ocean, counting the hours until his parents returned and a tremor ran through the floor beneath his feet. The window vibrated for 3 seconds, then went still. Liam had felt these shakes before, maybe a dozen times in the past week. The first time it happened, he told his father, who just shrugged and said the Velcrin engineers promised it was normal. Planets with this much water always had movement in the deep places, but this tremor felt stronger than the others. Liam walked away from the window and headed toward the residential sector where his family had a small cabin. The corridors were crowded with workers finishing their shifts. A group of Chitauri pushed past him without slowing down, their hard shells bumping his shoulder and nearly knocking him over. They clicked their mandibles in what might have been laughter. He turned down a side passage to avoid the crowds and immediately knew something was wrong. Water covered the floor, just a thin layer, but it should not be there at all. The lights flickered overhead, cycling through their normal yellow glow to a dim red emergency color and back again. Liam heard shouting from somewhere ahead. He started running, his shoes splashing through the water. More shouts echoed through the corridor, along with a grinding metal sound that made his teeth hurt. He rounded the corner and saw his father stumbling toward him, his mother right behind. Liam, thank God, his father gasped. His uniform was soaked, and blood ran from a cut above his eye. We need to get to the escape pods. Now, what happened? Liam asked, but his mother grabbed his hand and pulled him forward before his father could answer. They ran together through corridors that grew more crowded with every second. Aliens of every species pushed and shoved, all heading for the emergency stations. The water on the floor was ankle-deep now, and getting deeper. Another tremor hit, stronger than any before, and Liam fell to his knees. His mother hauled him back up. "Keep moving," she said, her voice tight with fear. They reached an intersection where 4 corridors met. A Velcrin in a blue uniform was directing traffic, pointing different species toward different escape routes. When he saw Liam's family, he waved them toward the left passage. "Human escape pods are in Section 7, the Velcrin called out. "Follow the green lights." Liam's father nodded and started in that direction, but another massive tremor hit and the ceiling groaned. Metal screamed and tore somewhere above them. A section of wall buckled inward, and suddenly water was not just on the floor, but pouring from a crack that split the corridor wall from top to bottom. The water hit like a fist. Liam felt his mother's hand ripped from his grip. He tumbled backward, slammed into something hard, and went under. The water was freezing cold and tasted like minerals and salt. He could not tell which way was up. His lungs burned. Something grabbed his jacket and pulled. He broke the surface, coughed, and saw his father holding him. His mother was swimming nearby, her face pale with terror. "The door!" his father shouted over the roar of rushing water. "We have to get through before it seals." An emergency bulkhead was sliding down from the ceiling 30 feet ahead, trying to contain the flood. They had maybe 20 seconds before it closed completely. Liam's father pushed him forward, and they swam as hard as they could. His mother went through first, then Liam, his father right behind them. Except his father was not behind them. Liam spun around in the water and saw that his father's leg was caught in debris, twisted metal that had fallen from the damaged wall. His father pushed at it with both hands, his face showing the effort, but it would not move. "Go," his father yelled. "Get Liam to the pods." "No," his mother screamed. She tried to swim back, but the bulkhead was almost closed, just 2 feet of space remaining. "I love you both," his father said. "Now go." The bulkhead slammed shut. Liam's mother beat her fists against it, sobbing, but it was solid metal and would not open. The water on their side was still rising, already up to Liam's chest. His mother grabbed him and started swimming again, pulling him toward where the escape pods should be. But Liam could see she was crying so hard she could barely see where she was going. They turned another corner and the corridor was completely flooded ahead. The emergency door had failed to close. There was no way through, no way to the pods, no way out. The water rose to Liam's neck. His mother lifted him up, trying to keep his head above the surface, but there was nowhere higher to go. The ceiling was right there, just inches away, and the water kept coming. "I'm sorry, baby," his mother whispered. "I'm so sorry." Liam felt the water cover his mouth, his nose, his eyes. He tried to hold his breath, but panic made his chest spasm. His mother's arms were still around him, but growing weaker. He thought about his father, trapped on the other side of the door. He thought about dying here in the dark water of an alien world, so far from Earth and home, and Liam began to cry. The first tear mixed with the flood water and started to glow soft blue. The tears kept falling even though Liam was underwater. They streamed from his eyes in a continuous flow, each one glowing brighter than the last. The blue light spread through the flooded corridor like living fire, pulsing with each beat of his racing heart. His mother still held him close, her own eyes wide with shock as she watched the impossible light emanating from her son. Liam's lungs screamed for air. His body wanted to gasp, to breathe, but there was only water. The glowing tears flowed faster now, mixing with the flood until the entire corridor blazed with blue luminescence. The light pushed outward through every crack and broken seal, spreading into the ocean beyond the station walls. Deep below, in trenches that the galactic survey teams never bothered to explore, something ancient felt the call. Deep Current had lived in the dark places of this world for 3,000 years. She was old even by the standards of her kind, her scales marked with the scars of centuries. She had seen the metal constructions of the younger races arrive in the sky above, watched them drop their stations into the water like thoughtless stones. They never came deep enough to bother her or her family. But now she felt something she had not sensed in millennia. A frequency that resonated in the oldest parts of her memory, passed down through generations beyond counting. The blue light, the crying child, the fear and love mixing together in that specific pattern that only one species in all the galaxy could create. Human. Deep Current rose from the trench, her massive body displacing water in waves that shook the ocean floor. Beside her, Tidecaller followed, and their daughter Brightscale moved with the swift grace of youth. They were not the only ones. All across the deep places of this world, sea dragons responded to the ancient call. They swam upward toward the light, toward the crying child, toward the oath their ancestors swore in Earth's oceans before these younger races even learned to make fire on Tidebreak Station. Liam's vision was going dark. His mother had stopped struggling, her body going limp as the water filled her lungs. The corridor was silent except for the groan of stressed metal and the hiss of escaping air from somewhere distant. The blue light continued to pulse, but dimmer now as Liam's consciousness began to fade. Then the entire station shook with an impact that made the earlier tremors feel like nothing. Metal shrieked as something massive struck the outer hull. A section of corridor wall buckled inward, and suddenly the flooded passage was not enclosed anymore. Ocean water, darker and colder than the station's recycled supply, poured in through a gap large enough to fly a shuttle through. But the gap did not get bigger. Instead, something blocked it. Something enormous and covered in scales that shimmered with their own blue bioluminescence. Deep Current forced her head through the breach, careful not to tear the opening wider. Her body was too large to fit inside, but she did not need to enter completely. She could sense the child, feel the glowing tears still falling despite his fading consciousness. With delicate precision that seemed impossible for a creature her size, she created a pocket of air around Liam and his mother, using her body as a barrier against the water. Liam gasped and coughed, water streaming from his mouth and nose. His mother jerked back to consciousness beside him, her own coughing fit violent and painful. They found themselves in a bubble of air that should not exist, held in place by the will and the body of something neither of them could fully comprehend. Deep Current's eye, larger than Liam's entire body, rotated to look at him. It glowed with its own soft light, ancient and intelligent beyond measure. When she spoke, the sound was not words, but vibrations that traveled through the water and air both, resonating in bones and blood until meaning formed directly in Liam's mind. Child of Earth. We remember. We remember the oath. Liam could not speak. His throat was raw from coughing, and his mind could not process what was happening. A creature from nightmare and legend held him safe in jaws that could swallow him whole without effort. But those jaws did not close. Instead, the dragon sang to him, low notes that felt like comfort and safety. Outside the bubble, Tidecaller and Brightscale worked to stabilize the damaged section of station. Tidecaller used his immense strength to brace the collapsing walls, while Brightscale sent pulses of bioelectric energy into the station's emergency systems. Lights flickered back to life. Backup power grids that had failed now surged with current carried by the dragon's will. Throughout Tiebreak Station, personnel stopped their panicked evacuation to stare at the monitors. Every screen showed the same impossible sight. Three massive creatures, like nothing in any galactic database, surrounded the station and held it together with their own bodies. The breach that should have killed everyone in the residential sector was sealed by living flesh and scale. In the command center, Director Spool stared at the readings with all three of his eye stalks. The Velcrin was old enough to have seen many strange things in his career, but this defied all logic. The creatures registered on sensors as biological, but their size was impossible. The energy readings from their bodies suggested power generation that rivaled fusion cores. "Give me a communication channel to whatever those things are," he ordered his crew. "And someone find out how many casualties we have." "Director," one of his technicians called out, "I'm reading massive movement in the deep ocean. More of those creatures are rising. Dozens of them. Maybe hundreds." Spool felt his skin shift through several colors, expressing emotions he did not want to name. If these creatures were hostile, the station would not last 5 minutes. But they had sealed the breach instead of widening it. They had restored power instead of destroying it. "Hold all defensive measures," he said quietly. "I want to know what they want before we do something stupid." In the air bubble held by Deep Current's protection, Liam finally found his voice. "Thank you," he whispered. The dragon's eyes swirled with colors he had no names for. "You carry the old blood. Your tears glow as they did in ancient seas. We swore we would come when called, and we have come. You're safe now, child. You and all who shelter here." Liam's mother pulled him close, her body shaking with sobs of relief and terror and wonder. Above them, Brightscale's head appeared through another gap in the ceiling, her scales gleaming like jewels. She was smaller than her parents, barely the size of a commercial transport, and her eyes showed the curiosity of youth. She looked at Liam and made a sound like music. Director Spool had lived through station failures, hostile takeovers, and even a brief war between mining corporations, but nothing in his long career prepared him for negotiating with creatures older than recorded history. He stood in the remains of the flooded corridor, water still dripping from the ceiling, and tried not to show fear as Deep Current's massive eye studied him. The dragon had allowed rescue teams to enter and evacuate the injured, including Liam's father, who was freed from the debris with broken ribs but alive. Now she waited, patient as stone, while Liam refused to leave her protection. "The boy needs medical attention," Spool said, keeping his voice calm. "His mother is well. They nearly drowned." Deep Current's response vibrated through the air. "They will not be harmed while under my protection. I have seen how your council treats those they consider valuable resources." "I don't understand," Spool admitted. "How do you know about the council?" "These waters were surveyed as uninhabited. The dragon made a sound that might have been laughter. We have watched the young races for longer than your species has had language. We chose not to be found. But when a child cries the tears that glow, we cannot hide. We will not hide. Liam sat with his back against deep current scaled hide, his mother beside him. The dragon's body heat kept them warm despite their soaked clothes. Brightscale had curled herself in the water nearby, her head resting on a partially collapsed section of floor, watching Liam with evident fascination. "Why do my tears glow?" Liam asked. His voice was small and tired, that deep currents I swirled with ancient colors. "Because you carry memory in your blood. Long ago, before your kind reached the stars, we knew your ancestors. A human child fell into Earth's deepest ocean, drowning in darkness and cold. That child cried, and those tears glowed blue just as yours do. We saved that child, and in doing so, we learned what makes humans unique among all the races we have encountered." "What makes us unique?" Liam's mother asked. "You cry for others before you cry for yourselves." That drowning child's tears glowed, not from fear of death, but from grief that their family would suffer their loss. Your son's tears tonight glowed brightest when he thought of his father trapped behind the sealed door. This capacity for love that transcends self-preservation, this is rare in the galaxy. This is why we swore an oath to protect humans whenever the tears call us. A commotion in the corridor interrupted the conversation. Galactic Council security forces arrived in heavy armor, weapons charged and ready. At their head strode Admiral Tixvera, a Chitauri whose purple shell bore the scars of a dozen military campaigns. Her multiple eyes fixed on the dragons with undisguised hostility. "Unknown hostile entities," she announced in the formal council dialect. "You have violated sovereign council territory and endangered civilian personnel. Withdraw immediately or face military response." Deep Current did not move. Tide Caller, who had been resting in the flooded lower decks, rose to his full height. The station groaned under the redistribution of his weight. Brightscale stopped watching Liam and turned her attention to the armed soldiers, a low warning rumble building in her throat. "Admiral, please," Spool said quickly. "These creatures saved the station. Without their intervention, the hull breach would have killed hundreds." "That is immaterial," Tixvera replied. "They have revealed themselves as indigenous sapients, which makes this planet's resources contested territory under Council law. They must submit to Council authority or be designated as hostile." Director Spool felt his skin flush with anger colors he rarely allowed others to see. He had suspected the Council's true motives for weeks, ever since geological surveys revealed the unique mineral deposits in the deep ocean trenches. Now, Tixvera showed her hand. The Council did not care about the station's safety. They wanted to establish legal grounds for claiming the entire planet, and they wanted the dragons either controlled or eliminated. Liam stood up, his legs shaky but his voice clear. "They're not hostile. They saved us. They saved everyone. Child, you do not understand the complexities of interstellar law," Tixvera said dismissively. "Return to your parents and leave these matters to adults." Something in her tone made Liam angry. He had nearly died tonight. He had watched his father, trapped behind a sealed door, watched his mother's eyes, close as the water, filled her lungs. He had cried tears that glowed with light he did not understand, and creatures from the deep had answered a call he did not know he made. He was tired of being dismissed because he was young, because he was human, because he was considered weak. "I understand that you're a liar," Liam said. The corridor went very quiet. "You don't care about safety. You want to hurt them because you're afraid of them, because they're strong and they don't need your permission to exist." Tixvera's mandibles clicked in anger. "You forget your place, child. I could have you removed from this station for obstruction of Council authority. Try it," Liam's mother said coldly, stepping forward to stand beside her son. "Touch my boy and see what happens." Deep Current shifted her massive body, and the movement alone made the corridor shake. Her voice filled the space with resonance that made the armed soldiers step back despite their training. "The child speaks truth. You came not to help, but to claim. You see value in tears that glow and scales that protect. You calculate profit margins and military advantages. This is why we remained hidden. This is why we watched, but did not reveal ourselves. Then you admit you've been conducting surveillance on council operations, Tixvera said, her voice triumphant. That alone is grounds for hostile classification. We have watched all the young races since they first burned fuel to escape their worlds. We have watched empires rise and fall. We have watched species discover kindness and species embrace cruelty. And now we watch as you prepare to make the same mistakes your predecessors made. And what mistakes are those? Spool asked quietly, treating wonder as resource, treating the unknown as threat, treating life as commodity to be exploited. The dragon's eye fixed on Liam again. This child's tears created energy that your scientists will soon measure and quantify. They will want to study him. They will want to replicate the phenomenon. They will forget that he is a child who nearly died tonight, who lost his home to your station's failures, who cried because he loves his family more than he fears death. Tixvera made a gesture, and her soldiers raised their weapons. Enough philosophy. You will submit to council custody for processing, or you will be eliminated as threats to civilized space. The corridor filled with more dragons, their bodies blocking every exit. 20 massive shapes moved through the station's corridors and flooded sections, each one ancient and patient and utterly unafraid of the weapons pointed at them. Deep Current's voice grew cold. You may try. The standoff lasted 3 hours before the council science team arrived. They came with portable laboratories and scanning equipment, their excitement barely contained as they took readings of the water that still glowed faintly blue where Liam's tears had mixed with the flood. The head scientist, a prismatic named Clarity, moved through the corridor with her crystalline body refracting light in patterns that indicated intense focus. Remarkable, she said, her voice like wind chimes. The enzyme composition is unlike anything in our databases. When a human tears interact with the mineral content of this planet's water, they create a temporary bioluminescent reaction that generates energy at a ratio of 10,000 to 1 compared to our best fusion systems. Admiral Tixvera listened to the report with obvious satisfaction. And this reaction can be replicated? Clarity hesitated. In theory, yes. But we would need a constant supply of the catalyst, which means we would need the child. Liam felt his mother's hand tighten on his shoulder. His father, who had been brought up for medical still wearing a breathing support harness for his broken ribs, moved closer to his family. The protective circle they formed was small and fragile compared to the armed soldiers surrounding them, but it was something. The boy will be taken into protective council custody, Tixvera announced. For his own safety, of course. We cannot allow such a valuable resource to remain in an unstable environment. He's not a resource, Liam's father said, his voice rough with pain and anger. He's our son. Your parental rights are noted and will be respected within the bounds of council emergency provisions, Tixvera replied, but her tone made it clear she considered the matter settled. The child will be relocated to a secure research facility where his unique properties can be studied and utilized for the greater good of all galactic civilization. Deep Current's growl shook dust from the ceiling. You will not take the child. You have no legal standing to prevent council actions, Tixvera said. And if you attempt to interfere, you'll be classified as hostile entities and dealt with accordingly. Director Spool had been quietly working his communication tablet during the entire exchange. Now, he looked up, his eye stalks showing colors of grim determination. I have contacted the human embassy on Central Station. They are dispatching representatives immediately. That is their right, Tixvera said, but it will not change the outcome. Council authority supersedes individual species' interests in matters of galactic security. You're calling an 8-year-old boy a security matter? Liam's mother asked. I'm calling the ability to generate unlimited clean energy a security matter. I am calling the discovery of a previously unknown sapient species a security matter. I am calling the potential for military applications of bioluminescent energy a security matter. Tixvera gestured to her soldiers. Take the child. Use whatever force is necessary, but do not harm the merchandise. The soldiers advanced. Deep Current moved to block them, but Tixvera had anticipated this. From concealed positions throughout the station, heavy weapons emerged, all targeted on the dragons. Not the small arms the soldiers carried, but ship-grade particle cannons designed to punch through armor plating. "You are in our station, surrounded by our weapons, outnumbered and outgunned," Tixvera said calmly. "Move aside or be destroyed." For a moment, Liam thought the dragon would attack anyway. Her massive body tensed, power building in her scales until they glowed bright enough to hurt his eyes. But then she looked down at him, and her ancient eyes showed something like sorrow. "I cannot protect you here, child. Not without destroying the very people you seek to save." "Then let me go," Liam said quietly. His parents both started to protest, but he shook his head. "If I fight, people die. If I run, people die. So I'll go with them, and maybe nobody has to die today." "Liam, no," his mother said. "It's okay, Mom." Liam tried to smile, but could not quite manage it. "The dragons found me once. Maybe they can find me again." Brightscale made a sound of distress, her young voice carrying harmonics that spoke of loyalty and friendship despite having known Liam for only hours. Tidecaller rumbled deep in his chest, the sound of a father who understood the impossible choice being made. And Deep Current lowered her massive head until her eye was level with the small boy who had called them from the depths. "We will find you, child of Earth. No matter where they take you, no matter how they try to hide you." The oath we swore was not for a single night, but for all the nights to come. "You have my word." The soldiers took Liam then, their hands surprisingly gentle despite Tixvera's orders. They led him away from his parents, away from the dragons, away from the flooded corridor where his tears had glowed blue and changed everything. His mother sobbed, held back by his father who looked ready to fight despite his broken ribs, but knew it would be suicide. Director Spool watched them go, his skin displaying colors of shame and helplessness. He had managed this station for 12 years, through accidents and incidents and all the normal chaos of a multicultural outpost. But he had never felt more like a failure than he did right now, watching a child taken by force while claiming it was for his own good. Clarity approached him, her crystalline form dim with what might have been regret. "Director, I want you to know I oppose this action. My recommendations were for voluntary participation and full family inclusion. This is not how science should be conducted." "Then why didn't you refuse?" Spool asked. "Because Tixvera would have simply found another scientist who cared less about ethics. At least this way, I could try to minimize the harm." She looked toward where the soldiers had taken Liam. "I will do everything I can to protect him. Will it be enough?" Spool asked. Clarity did not answer. In the deep ocean, more dragons arrived. They came from trenches and caves, from thermal vents and cold currents, from places the Council's surveys never reached because the equipment could not survive the pressure. They gathered beneath Tiebreak Station in numbers that made the sea itself seem crowded. Deep Current descended to meet them, and her song carried the story of broken oaths and stolen children. The ancient voices answered with harmony that spoke of patience older than mountains and fury deeper than oceans. They had waited millennia without revealing themselves, watching civilizations rise and fall from the depths. They could wait a little longer, but not much longer. Above them, in a medical bay converted to temporary holding, Liam sat on a metal bench and tried not to cry. He failed. The tears fell, and in the dim light of the locked room, they glowed blue. The human ships arrived 16 hours later, and they were nothing like the sleek council vessels that filled the orbital space around Hydros 7. Earth's fleet was small, just 12 ships total, and most of them were older designs that predated humanity's admission to the Galactic Council by decades. The flagship was a carrier called Indomitable, a massive brick of a ship that looked more like an industrial hauler than a military vessel. Captain Ruth Okonkwo stood on the bridge of the Indomitable and studied the tactical display with practiced calm. 40 Council warships surrounded Tiebreak Station, weapons hot and ready. 23 massive, unknown biological entities circled in the deep ocean below, their energy signatures unlike anything in the database. And somewhere in that station, A human child was being held against his will. Admiral Tixvera is hailing us, her communications officer reported. Put her through, Ruth said. The Chitauri admiral appeared on the main screen, her purple shell gleaming under the harsh lights of her command center. Captain Okonkwo, your presence here is unnecessary and unwelcome. This is a council matter involving council resources on a council-administered station. That council matter involves a human citizen, Ruth replied. We're here to retrieve him. The child is under protective custody for his own safety. We have no intention of harming him. Then release him to our custody and we'll take him somewhere safe. Unacceptable. The child possesses unique properties that are of vital interest to galactic security. He will remain with council scientists until we understand the full implications of his abilities. Ruth leaned forward her chair. Let me be very clear, Admiral. That boy's name is Liam. He's 8 years old. He likes drawing pictures of spacecraft, and he's terrified of deep water. He's not a resource or security concern. He's a child who nearly died in a station failure that your people are responsible for. Now you can release him peacefully, or we can discuss alternatives. Tixvera's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. Captain, you have 12 ships. I have 40. Your fleet is outdated, and your weapons are inferior to ours. If you engage, you will lose. Probably, Ruth agreed. But the question is, can you afford to start a shooting war with humanity over one child? Because that's what this becomes the moment you fire the first shot. And humans, well, we're not very good at forgetting things like that. The transmission cut off. Ruth sat back and allowed herself a small smile. She had not expected the threat to work. Tixvera was too smart to be bullied by words alone. But threats bought time, and time was what Ruth needed. Status on the evacuation, she asked. 3 of our transports are already docking with the station, her executive officer replied. Medical teams are standing by to receive casualties from the hull breach. Engineering crews are offering assistance with repairs. Good. Make sure we document everything. I want full records of the damage, casualty reports, safety violations, all of it. You're building a legal case, the officer said, understanding dawning. I'm building several cases. Legal, ethical, and public relations. When this is over, the council is going to have to answer some very uncomfortable questions about why they let a civilian station fall into such disrepair that it nearly killed everyone aboard. On Tiebreak Station, Liam sat in his locked room and listened to the sounds of activity in the corridors outside. Human voices, speaking English with accents from a dozen different Earth nations, calling out instructions and status reports. The sound of his own people made his chest ache with homesickness for a planet he barely remembered. The door opened and Clarity entered, her crystalline body refracting the corridor lights into rainbow patterns. Behind her came a human woman in a medical uniform, her dark skin and kind eyes reminding Liam painfully of his grandmother back on Earth. Liam, my name is Dr. Adeyemi, the woman said gently. I'm with the Earth Medical Corps. I'm here to make sure you're okay. I want to see my parents, Liam said. We're working on that. But first, I need to check you over. You nearly drowned, and water in the lungs can cause problems even after you can breathe again. Liam submitted to the examination, letting Dr. Adeyemi listen to his chest and check his vital signs. Clarity stood by the door, observing but not interfering. When the doctor finished, she sat down beside Liam on the bench. The dragons, she said quietly. Are they still here? They're in the ocean, Liam said. Waiting. Waiting for what? For me, I think. Dr. Adeyemi glanced at Clarity, then back to Liam. Honey, I need to tell you something. The council wants to take you to a research facility. They say it's for your protection, but really, they want to study why your tears glow. They want to figure out how to make that energy for themselves. I know, Liam said. Captain Okonkwo is trying to prevent that. But she needs leverage, something to force the council to back down. Do you understand what I'm saying? Liam thought about it. You want me to cry again. So the dragons come back. I want you to call your friends, Dr. Adeyemi corrected gently. Because right now, they're the only thing the council is afraid of. Clarity shifted, her body chiming softly. Dr. Adeyemi, I must protest. Deliberately inducing emotional distress in a child is unethical. So is kidnapping him. Dr. Adeyemi replied. We're past the point of ethical perfection. Now we're just trying to minimize harm. Liam closed his eyes and thought about his father, trapped behind the sealed door, his mother's arms going weak in the water, the moment when he thought he would never see them again. The tears came easily, flowing down his cheeks and dropping to the metal floor where they landed with soft impacts, and began to glow. The blue light spread across the floor, brighter than before, pulsing with a rhythm that matched Liam's heartbeat. It seeped through the cracks in the door, crawled along the walls, dripped through ventilation grates into the corridors below. Within minutes, entire sections of the station glowed with blue luminescence that grew stronger with each passing second. In the ocean depths, Deep Current felt the call and answered. She rose with her family, with her clan, with every dragon that had gathered in the deep places. They moved as one, a living tide of ancient power and purpose. The water above them glowed blue with reflected light from the station, and their own scales answered with bioluminescence that turned the ocean into a sky full of stars on the Indomitables Bridge. Ruth watched her sensors fill with contacts. How many? She asked. Over 100 now, the tactical officer replied. And still rising. They're surrounding the station completely. Ruth opened a channel to Admiral Tixvera. Still think you have the advantage? The Chitauri admiral stared at her tactical display, her compound eyes reflecting the impossible numbers. 40 warships against 12 human vessels was excellent odds. 40 warships against 100 creatures that could tear through hull plating with their teeth was suicide. What do you want? Tixvera asked finally. The child, Ruth said, released to his parents immediately. And Council forces withdraw from this planet entirely. That's unacceptable. Then start shooting and see what happens. In the water below, Brightscale breached the surface, her young voice singing a challenge that carried for miles. The standoff lasted another 3 hours before the first crack appeared in Admiral Tixvera's position. It came not from military pressure, but from something far more dangerous to the Council's authority: public opinion. Clarity had been recording everything, and now those records spread across the galactic network at light speed. Images of Liam crying in a locked room. Audio of Tixvera calling an 8-year-old child merchandise. Video of the dragons saving hundreds of lives during the hull breach, while Council forces did nothing. Within hours, every screen in civilized space showed the story, and the reaction was overwhelming. Protests erupted on Council worlds. The Velcrin Workers' Union called for a general strike. 3 prismatic consortiums withdrew their support for the current Council administration. Even some Chitauri military commanders publicly questioned the Admiral's tactics. The pressure became impossible to ignore. Director Spool presented the final argument in a secured communication with Council Central. His skin displayed colors of cold fury as he laid out the evidence. The hull breach occurred because the Council reduced maintenance budgets by 40% over 3 years, he said. We filed 17 safety complaints that were ignored. The station's structural integrity was compromised long before those dragons arrived. They didn't cause the disaster. They prevented a complete catastrophe. And now you want to kidnap the child who survived your negligence because his biology might be profitable. The Council representative, an elderly prismatic named Spectrum, listened in silence. When Spool finished, the representative's body pulsed with colors that indicated deep thought. What resolution do you propose? Spectrum asked. The child returns to his parents. Earth is granted full sovereignty over human citizens in Council space. The dragons are recognized as sapient beings with full rights and representation. And this planet is declared their sovereign territory, off limits to Council exploitation. That's asking for a great deal. That's asking for basic justice. And if the Council refuses, those dragons down there have made it very clear what happens next. Spectrum's colors shifted to acceptance. I will present these terms to the full Council, but I suspect they will agree. We cannot afford another war, especially not with humanity and their new allies. On Tiebreak Station, Liam's door opened and his parents rushed in. His mother grabbed him in a hug, so tight it hurt, and his father knelt beside them both, his breathing harness hissing softly as he pulled his family close. They stayed that way for a long time, not speaking, just holding each other. Doctor Adeyemi watched from the doorway with tears in her own eyes. Captain Okonkwo stood beside her, her usual stern expression softened by something like relief. "It's done," Ruth said quietly. The council agreed to all terms. "You're free to go." Liam looked up at her. "What about the dragons? What about them? Can I say goodbye?" Ruth smiled. "I think they'd like that." They took him down to the lower observation deck, the one that looked out into the deep ocean. The water was clear now, the sediment settled, and Liam could see the dragons moving in the depths below. Deep Current was there, her massive form graceful despite her size. Tide Caller circled nearby, and Brightscale played in the currents with other young dragons who had come to witness the resolution of the ancient oath. Liam pressed his hand against the thick glass, and far below, Deep Current rose to meet him. Her eye, vast and ancient and kind, looked at him through the barrier. Her voice resonated through the water and hull both. "You are safe now, child of Earth. The oath is fulfilled, but not ended. We have watched your kind for millennia from the shadows, waiting to see if you would become predators or protectors. Today, we have our answer. Will I see you again?" Liam asked always. "When you swim in any ocean, we are there. When you cry tears that glow, we will come. Your people and my people are bound now by more than old promises. We are bound by the choice you made to call us, and the choice we made to answer." Brightscale swam up beside her mother, her scales shimmering with excitement. She pressed her snout against the glass directly in front of Liam's hand, and he laughed despite his tears. These tears did not glow blue. These were just normal tears, the kind that came from happiness and relief and the strange grief of saying goodbye to someone you barely knew but already loved. "Thank you," Liam whispered, "for saving us, for saving everyone. We thank you, child, for reminding us why we swore the oath in the first place, for showing us that humanity still carries the gift that made them unique. The capacity to love strangers, to weep for others, to stand small and fragile against the vast dark and refuse to surrender hope." The dragons descended back into the depths, their bioluminescence fading as they went deeper. Liam watched until the last light disappeared, then turned to his parents. "Can we go home?" he asked. His father smiled, wincing as the movement pulled at his broken ribs. Yes, we can go home." 6 months later, Liam stood on a beach on Earth, his feet in the sand, the waves washing over his toes. The ocean here was different from the one on Hydros 7, warmer and full of life that didn't glow in the dark. But it was still ocean, still deep and mysterious and full of ancient things. His mother sat on a blanket further up the beach, reading a book and occasionally looking up to check on him. His father was healed now, the broken ribs just a memory, and he waited in the shallows nearby, collecting shells. Liam walked deeper into the water until it was up to his waist. He closed his eyes and thought about Deep Current and Tide Caller, and especially Brightscale, who he missed more than he expected to miss someone he had known for such a short time, that a single tear fell from his eye into the ocean, and it glowed blue. Far below, deeper than any human vessel had ever explored, something vast and ancient felt the call. Deep Current did not rise to the surface. The child was not in danger, not crying from fear or pain. This was different. This was a greeting, a message sent across the depths to say, "I remember you. I think of you. Thank you for being there." She sent her own message back, carried through the water by vibrations too low for human ears but felt in human bones. "We are here, child of Earth. We are always here." Brightscale, unable to contain her excitement, did surface. She breached half a mile offshore, her body arcing through the air in a display of joy and power. Liam's father shouted in surprise, nearly dropping his bucket of shells. His mother stood up from the blanket, her hand over her mouth. Liam just laughed and waved. The young dragon crashed back into the water with a splash that sent waves rolling to shore. Then she was gone, diving deep to return to her family. But Liam knew she would come back. They both would, whenever he needed them. because some bonds transcended species and space and time. Some promises, once made, were kept forever. And some tears glowed blue not because they were sad, but because they connected a small human boy to creatures older than mountains, deeper than oceans, and more patient than stars. Liam walked back to shore where his parents waited, questions already forming on their lips. He would tell them everything. About the message he sent, about Brightscale's answer, about the knowledge that he would never truly be alone as long as the oceans existed and the dragons swam in their depths. But for now, he just stood between his mother and father, held their hands, and watched the waves roll in beneath a sky full of clouds and distant stars. Somewhere in that vast universe, the council debated new policies and old species learned to share space with ancient ones. Somewhere out there, humanity was still finding its place among the stars. But here, on this beach, in this moment, Liam was just a boy who had cried tears that glowed blue, and in doing so, had reminded the galaxy of something it had forgotten, that the smallest voice could summon the greatest protectors if that voice spoke with genuine need and honest love, that sometimes the weak were stronger than they appeared, and the strong were kinder than they seemed, and that in all the vast darkness of space, the rarest and most precious thing was not energy or power or conquest, but the simple ability to cry for others and know that someone, somewhere, would answer.